Hello and welcome to this tutorial. I'm back again with a new one, and this one I'm going to show you how to use Panda CSS with NextJS and the app folder. I'm going to refactor an application, a quiz app that I already have here on this channel where I use Tailwind CSS. So I'm going to show you how to refactor it from Tailwind to Panda CSS. Panda CSS is a new library that will work a lot better with the new React server components and the app folder in NextJS, for example, that I'm using here. When you have CSS in JS. So I think it's pretty neat and it's starting to gain some ground. I think it's pretty new actually, so I haven't used that a lot, but it's a lot of fun and I'm going to show you that now. All right, so let's start to refactor this sucker from Tailwind into Panda CSS. And I built this quiz app before. I have it on my YouTube channel, actually 2 versions. The latest version is the one where I built it with Next.js and the app folder. So I use this API for fetching questions, and you can start the quiz and you can see here you have 4 different alternatives to choose from, and you select one, and this was obviously wrong, so it shows red, but it also shows the correct answer here, and there's 10 questions now. You can configure that in the code, but this is the application that I'm going to use to refactor into using Panda CSS instead of Tailwind CSS as I used for this one before. Let's start off by going to panda-css.com, and they have a little instruction here for us when using Next.js and what we should do. So the first thing we do here is to actually install everything and set it up in the Next.js project. I already have my Next.js project, so I don't need to create a new one here, as they say, as the first step. So we go directly to the step number 2 here and install Panda CSS. I'm going to use npm. I have my old application here. This is the one that uses Tailwind, and I have a little nice terminal down here. And my microphone is in my way here, so I have to move that a little bit like that. So we check out the homepage here. We can just copy and paste this one. npm install, and it's a dev dependency, panda css-dev. Copy this one, go back here, paste it in, and we wait for it. Meanwhile, it installs. Okay, so everything installed correctly here. We have one more step here in the terminal for now, and that is to run the command npx panda init, and it will create a kind of a config file for us for Panda CSS. And it says it here, you see, postcss.config.js. It uses postcss. That is what is going to set up here for us. So just run this command, npx panda init --postcss. And you can see that it tells us here what we need to do, but I'm going to go through these steps for us so we can clear this for now. And I can actually check this out here. You can see that we have the dev dependencies, Panda CSS. We can safely remove Tailwind CSS. We're not going to use that one. So I ditched that. And then you can see it has created a new post.css config file here for us, but it named it CJSS now because we already have this one. So remove this old one here. We only need a new one, and we rename it to .js instead. So you can see that it created this nice little snippet of code here for us. And then we have the panda config.ts. So in the third step, it wants us to update our script in package.json. And this one, when you have something that's called prepare here in the scripts, it's going to run this every time you run npm install. So copy this one, go back here to the package.json file. Every time you run npm install, it's going to run this one also. So this one will run the Panda code every time you run npm install. And you can see that it also created this folder for us here called styled system. So everything that's related to Panda is inside of this folder for us to use. So that's pretty neat. So go back here. Now we need to configure the content. So let's go inside the panda config.ts file. So first of all, you can see that it's inside the source folder. I don't have a source folder here. I just have a components folder and the app folder. So this one I don't need. So here you can include every directory you want Panda to be searching for your CSS. For example, using the source folder, you should of course leave it in, but I'm not using that. I'm not also using the pages router. I'm using the app router. So I changed this one. But then I have my components folder also, so I can actually copy this one. This is an array, so you can include every directory you want here. And I changed this one to components. And this will be enough for this application. But if you have more folders and stuff like this, you have to include them here. We don't need to do anything here right yet. to set this up. So I think this is enough for now, actually. I'm going to define some global styles here for us later. Number 5, you have to configure the entry CSS with layers. Okay, so we copy and paste this one here. So inside our app folder, we have the global CSS, and this one is set up for using Tailwind. We're not using that anymore, so we paste in this one here. Go back, check if we have done everything. You have to import the entry CSS in our application. I'm already doing that in my layout file. You can see here, globals.css. So that's fine. And then we can start using Panda. So let's see if it works. npm run dev. I already have the other one running on port 3000. So we're going to use this one instead. And it seems to be working. And that is pretty neat. But you have to also consider this one. If it complains that it can't transform the const or something, I don't remember, you should also change this to using ES6. It actually worked anyways now. But change that one to use ES6. And of course, this one looks like crap right now, but that is because we haven't done any styles yet. This is only the setup of Panda CSS. So that was all the step that you need to take care of for implementing Panda CSS and set it up in your NextJS installation. Next, we're going to create some styles and convert these styles that I have in Tailwind here and use Panda CSS instead. All right, we're going to style this one with Panda CSS now, because as you can see here, it doesn't look that good. So we have to go back inside of the code editor. And the first thing we got to do is to actually have our font here. That's the Quicksand font from Google Fonts. So we have to somehow include this one with Panda CSS also. And it's quite similar, because if you look here in the Tailwind config, you have to extend your theme to create this variable and the name for the font here. So we're going to do almost exactly the same. In the layout, I'm creating the font here with Next.js. So this one can actually look the same. You can see that I apply it here on the main. And I think I can actually move this one up. It doesn't matter if it's on the main, but it's probably better to have it on the HTML right now. So we can have a class name. We have the quicksand.variable like that. So I move that one up, and this one can look like this for now. We're going to remove this one, so it doesn't matter. So let's get back to that later. So everything is in order here with the font, but inside the panda.config.ts, we have to do something similar as we did with the Tailwind config. So we have this theme here, and we can extend the theme. We have a property named tokens, where you can create different tokens in your setup. Then we have the fonts, and we're going to have the Quicksand. So you can name it to whatever you want here, but of course I want to name it Quicksand because that's the name of the font. And we have an object. The value is going to be that CSS variable that Next.js creates for us, and it's called --font-quicksand. So if we look here in the layout, you can see when we create this font, you can see that it creates this CSS variable that's called font quicksand. So that's the one we are grabbing here. And then we can have probably a monospace or something as a fallback font. Do some formatting. So that is the font. So this is everything you have to do here instead of the Tailwind config here. So we can actually remove the Tailwind config also. We don't need that one. And go back to the Panda config, because now we also have some global styling to do. Inside this layout here, you can see that I actually do it here on the body. But I want to do this in the setup for Panda instead, so we don't need to have this, this class here. So we have this one define config here. We also have a property that's called global CSS. You can write it directly here if you want to do that. But they also have a function for this one, define global styles. So we can create it up here, const global CSS. And define global styles. We use that function that we imported, and it wants an object with the styles. So here we have the HTML and the body, and we have an object, because now we are in JavaScript creating our styles. And the background is going to be 2B2737. And we have the color, it's going to be white, and the padding is going to be 4. And we also need to set up our font here because that's the one that we're going to use globally. So font family, it's going to be Quicksand. And we can use this here because we named it Quicksand down here. So that's why we are grabbing that one here. So instead of creating this global CSS here, we can just leave it like that. I shouldn't have a capital D. It should be like that. So that's cool. Okay. So that's the global setups here. We have set up the background color, and the color on the font is going to be white as a default. We have a small padding, and we set up our font. So that's pretty neat. We go back to the layout. We can now remove this class name on the body because we're doing that globally in the setup. So if we save this one, go back to the application, reload it, and it doesn't work. And this is probably because NextJS is caching this. I actually forgot to do this. You can see here, I don't see any styles. They recommend you to actually update the dev command here to clear the cache every time you start it up. So we're going to do that. Copy this one, go back into package.json. We update the dev, or you can remove it manually, and that's the .next folder. We can just remove that one if we want and restart it. And now you can see that it works. We have the background color and the text color is white, and we are using the correct font also, so that's pretty neat. So that's how you set it up. Now we can move on here to see what we have to do with the Tailwind classes here. So this is a flex, as you can see here, and if we import something that's called a stack, and this is a virtual stack because we wanted them to stack vertically, you have this little helper function in Panda CSS that's called vstack. I'm actually going to do like this, so we keep the old one as we type this. So class name, we call the vstack. We have the object, the max width. I'm using the shorthands now. You don't need to do that if you don't want to do it, but they have these nice shorthands here in Panda CSS. So we have a maximum width of 900 pixels. Like that. We have a width that's going to be full. And we have a margin set to auto. Like that. And this is everything we need to replace this code here. Like that. We also have some CSS here on the image. So I create a new class name. So when you create styles with Panda, you have this function called CSS. You could create your flex by just using properties for the flex, but it's pretty handy to have this vstack here. Now, otherwise we have to define it as a flex, and we have to and also center the items and stuff like that, and which direction we want the flex to be. So this is pretty neat. If you have a horizontal stack, you have something that's called H stack instead. So pretty neat. But now we use the CSS because we don't have a stack here. So class name. We call the CSS, we have our object. The height is going to be 80 pixels on this image, but we also have a viewport change on this one. So when it's small, medium, or larger, the height is going to be full. So this is pretty neat. You can nest stuff like this with Panda CSS. And we can remove this one here. So I think we have removed all the code here for this one. So let's go back and check. Yes. But we also have some styles in the page itself. You can see here. So we have to style that, but now it's centered. So we just have to style this home page here. So this one here, class name text center, that is simply going to be replaced by CSS text line center. And we also need to import CSS from style system -css. So you can see that we're importing this one from the one that's created here for us. And that is what the Codian will do, the Panda Codian. It creates it locally for you, so you can use it. Okay, here's some stuff happening down here. Nothing to worry about. So there you have it, text align center. We move on to the p tag here also. So this is a white color and the padding, CSS. Color, white, and the P is going to be 4 on that one. Here we have a max width and the width full and rounded. So how do we tackle that one? CSS, we have the max W, the max width. It's going to be 700 pixels. And we set the width to full. And we have rounded. And now I can also show you we have the nice auto completion here. So everything you can use here is shown up here as an autocomplete. In our case, we're going to have an arbitrary value of 10 pixels. And we have the last one here on the P tag. We have a color and some stuff here. CSS color is going to be 9F50 AC. So that's the color. The padding top is going to be 2. Padding bottom is going to be 8. And the font size is going to be 10 pixels like that. And we need to close this one also like that. I type every one of these as a string. So 8. So this is everything here for this one. So let's go back to see how it looks. You can see that we have the nice little rounded corners here, and we have changed the styling on this text here and stuff like that. So that's pretty neat. The start quiz button, we have to style that separately. And also I've noticed that you have these nice little tools now online where you actually can just paste in your Tailwind code and you get the code in Panda CSS. But I don't want to do this here because, yeah, hopefully you'll learn something to type it in yourself here. So that's everything in the layout and the page for the main page, the home page. So go inside the components folder and the button.tsx. So we're going to style this one also. So you can see that we have some styles here. And I can also show you that it's possible to actually create the styles outside, not inline like this. Import CSS. So we can create a const, call it styles or whatever you want, CSS. I did a lot of like this before when I use style components. I have a separate style file. I don't necessarily like to have them inline like this all the time because I think it's quite messy. So sometimes I like to have it in a separate style file, but that is only my preferences. There's no right or wrong. So here we set the background color again to 9F50 AC. We have the user select. It's going to be set to none. We don't want the user to be able to select anything here. The font weight is going to be bold. The height is going to be 45 pixels. And the min width is going to be 120 pixels. We have a colon here. And rounded, we set that one to 10 pixels. And the color is going to be white. So this code here corresponds to this Tailwind code down here. And now we can grab this one, delete it, and we can use our styles like that. So let's save it and go back and see what we've got so far. So this is the button here. So the home page is complete. And it should also be responsive because I made this quiz mainly for mobile devices. So let's go back and actually style the quiz itself. So you can see that it looks like this now, and that's no good. Go back to the code editor, and we have this one, this folder here inside the app folder that's called quiz. So we actually have the quiz itself, and we have the page itself. The page is a server component that will fetch the data on the server. So we don't need to do anything here because we don't have any styling. But if you're interested in how to see that I did this, you can check out the page. So this is the quiz. You can see that we have some styles here. So let's do this. Just replace these ones here from top to bottom. We have to import the CSS function also. Import CSS from the style systems. CSS. And we have the object. Color is going to be white. The text align is going to be center. So that one replaces the old Tailwind code. Here we call CSS. The padding P is going to be 8. The font weight is going to be bold. Font size is going to be 20 pixels. And this is it for the score table. And then we have this one here. CSS. We have the color. It's going to be 9F5OAC. Again, I could have set this up in a theme or something so I don't have to type it out arbitrary like this every time. The font width is going to be bold. The padding bottom, PB, is going to be 2. And the font size is going to be 14 pixels. And that one replaces the old Tailwind code. What do we have more? We have some down here. And this is a flex. Instead of using that stack that I did before, I can show you how you can just type it as regular flex. So display is going to be flex. And justify content is going to be space between on this one. And we have a margin top. It's going to be 16. So you can see here that you can just type it in like this instead if you don't want to use the stack or any special functions. You can use just the plain CSS function for doing everything here if you want to do that instead. And these should be all the styles. So let's go back and see. Yeah, it's starting to look like something at least. But we have to style these questions and stuff like that also. And that one is styled in the components folder and the question card. And you can see that I have a special little helper function here because these styles are generated on build time. So you can't dynamically generate styles in runtime. And it's the same with Tailwind as it is with Panda CSS. So I'm actually not going to use this way of doing it because I'm going to create something that's called a recipe with Panda CSS instead. So we don't need to have this helpers function. But go inside the questions card and I will talk about that shortly. We can do just a regular styling here first. Yeah, I can actually show you a little trick here also because we have this kind of wrapper here and you can see that I style the individual p tag here and the span. So if we do like this, class name, wrapper styles, and now I'm going to show you how to not do it inline. First, we need to import CSS like that. And then we can create a const wrapper styles. And we call the CSS function, create an object. And now I'm showing you different ways of doing things. I'm not saying that anything is right or wrong here. I think it's cool to just show you different ways of doing it. So instead of styling these ones in lines, I can show you that you can nest these ones. It's a p tag, probably this is a header, so it should probably be an h2 tag instead. And the wrapper styles is going to be applied to this outer div here. And if we use an ampersand and h2, we're going to style the h2 tag like that. So we kind of nest it inside of that one. We set the font size to 20 pixels and the max width is going to be 400 pixels. And we can also style the span tag. So ampersand, span. We have overflow set to hidden on that one. And the text overflow is going to be ellipsis. And white space is going to be no wrap. So this one here replaces the trunket class from Tailwind. So we remove the class name on the span and also on the h2 tag. And now as we style these like nested inside of the wrapper styles, they should be styled. So these ones are styled now by creating this const that I applied to the wrapper div here instead. So just the way of doing it. You can, of course, style them inline here on each separate element instead. Okay, so let's see what we got here. we have this one here, and this is a flex, so we can create a stack here instead. So import vstack from style systems /patterns, and then we can style it here, call the vstack, provide it with an object, and on this one we're only going to set the padding top to 8, and we only have the actual answers left to do, and this is this dynamic change where I use this helper function. You can see here that the correct answer is going to be displayed green, and the wrong answer is going to be red, and the default answer is going to be white, but have this kind of purple text. So there are 3 different cases here, and instead of using this helper function, I'm actually going to create something that's called a Panda recipe. So a Panda recipe, I don't know exactly. We have to import something that's called CVA from Panda CSS. It's actually the same here, so we can just do it here instead, like that. And then we create a recipe. This one is going to be button. We call the CVA that we imported, and we give it an object. First, we set the base, because this button is going to have 3 different visuals, so to say, but we have a base visual on each of them. So the base is going to be this code down here that is not dynamically set. So I'm just going to type it in now. It's quite boring, actually, so I'm just going to be pretty fast here. So the display is going to be flex on this one. We justify the content to center. We align the items to center. And we have a cursor that we want to be a pointer. And user select is going to be none on this also. We don't want the user to be able to select the answers. The font weight is going to be bold. The min height is going to be 45 pixels. The max width is going to be 400 pixels. The width is going to be full. The margin top is going to be 2. And the margin bottom is going to be 2. And rounded 10 pixels. So this is the base style for our button that we're creating. Then we create a new property that's called variants. You can see the autocomplete here gives us a property that's called variants. So we create a variant that's called visual. And the visual is going to have 3 different visuals. So we have the default. And these ones, I name them myself. So this ones isn't set in stone, so to say. You can call them whatever you want. We have a default look on the button. The background is going to be white. And the color is going to be that color again, 9F50AC. So that's the first default variant. Then we have the correct, that's the correct answer. The BG. The BG is going to be green if we have a correct answer. So that one is going to be 55AC78. And the color is going to be set to white on that one. And then we have the wrong answer, so wrong. The BG is going to be the red color. So that one is AC5050. And the color is going to be white also there. So these are the 3 different variants, but we can also set a default variant if we want to do that. So default variants. We need to have a comma, default variants. The visual, we set that one to the correct. And that is, of course, the one that we named here. So, or you can have it, of course, to default. I don't know why I choose correct. It should be default, of course. So this is how you create a recipe when you have different styling for different situations. And how do we actually flip between these different visuals? Well, we have to do some stuff here and not do it as before. We don't need this get background color here. I'm actually going to remove all of this stuff here. And the class name, we have created a class that's called button. I'm using a div here. You can, of course, also use a button here if you want to do that. But button is actually a function that we can call like this. And we can send in an object. We have created the visual variant. And now we need to do some condition now. So we can check the conditions that I have in the helper. So first we can start with a wrong answer here probably. So here we have the condition here. I can paste this one, copy and paste this one. I go back and create a turner operator instead. And now you can see that it complains because it needs this is answer correct. And I have this here that I calculate up here. So I copy this one, go back, and we have it here instead. And I have a question mark as this is a turner operator. And if the answer is wrong, we're going to use the wrong visual. And then I actually create a nested turner operator here. So we have the second condition. This one is going to be quite long because I do 2 checks here. So I copy this once like that. And then the visual is going to be correct. Otherwise, set it to the default. Do some formatting. So you can see this turner operator. It's actually not that neat here. It's quite hard to read maybe. So you could do the calculations somewhere else instead of just inline like this. But I think it will do for now. So if the answer isn't correct and the answer is equal to the user answer, we're going to set it to the wrong visual variant. If the answer is correct and the answer is equal to the user answer, we set it to the correct variant. And we also do that if the answer is false and the answer is equal to the correct answer. Otherwise, we fall back to the default. So let's save this one and see if it works. If I click here, that was the wrong answer. I'm just clicking, I'm not reading it at all. That was the right answer. So you can see it works just as before, and we have successfully refactored this application into using Panda CSS instead of Tailwind CSS. And this is pretty neat how you can create your own recipes here and then flip between the variants dynamically, because these styles are going to be created at build time, so they're going to be there for you to just flip between them. Great, this was fun. I think I'm going to use Panda CSS a lot more to kind of dive into it to see how it works in different situations. And I think it seems to be a neat way of creating your styles. We can also, as a last thing, just remove this helpers. We don't need that one anymore. So there you have it. There's the application. Hope seeing you in another tutorial. Please like this one and spread the word about my channel. I like to teach front-end stuff and especially React stuff. See you in another one.